What are some really dangerous things most people don't realize are dangerous? Story 1. Driving while not getting enough sleep. Yeah, in general, if that's all people were doing, it probably wouldn't be so dangerous. But it's so normal for folks that they tune out, their minds wander, and they start looking at their phones or staring at clouds. The next thing you know, someone in a Nissan Altima has slammed on their brakes because of a squirrel, a trailer jackknifes in response, and now there's a 36-car pileup and a 2-hour delay. As someone who's actually been a race car driver, even race car drivers don't focus 100% of the time, but eyes up is something I repeat about a dozen times before every green drops. Get your goddamn eyes on the effing road, preferably as far as you can see. If the car ahead ever surprises you, you're not looking far enough. Do this for a while and it's incredibly easy to spot other drivers who are driving 2 feet in front of their face. Random braking, weird speed or direction changes, being surprised by something you saw coming, etc. We say keep your eyes on the road, but really we also mean the road includes all the driveways, houses, intersections, trees, dogs, kids, bears, other drivers, etc. that can quickly enter the roadway as well. So keep your eyes moving around, because it takes a long time to train peripheral vision. Also, target fixation is a thing, so stop staring at a thing that you don't want to hit, or your body will make you hit it. Actually, these instructions are getting pretty long and we're not even started, and people can't learn this much this fast. Put on a podcast and zone out. No problems there. Keep your eyes on the damn road. You can't estimate a braking distance from a text, but you can more than double one with a quick glance. One of my scariest memories is trying to drive home from work one night while sleep deprived. I used to work in a movie theater, back in the days when midnight premieres were a thing. One day I worked my normal closing shift, which was 5:30 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. But then I offered to stay late with the midnight shift to help close since 12 a.m. shows were kind of chaotic. All said and done, I didn't get out of there until nearly 3 a.m. It was about 25 minutes to get home, and it didn't take long for me to realize I shouldn't be on the road. But I didn't know what else to do, so I continued. I took the back roads home, so there was no one else on the road, which was good. I did all the stay-awake tricks I knew, pinch myself, open the windows and play loud music. Nothing helped, but I didn't know what else to do, so I continued. About 15 minutes from home, the hallucinations started. I saw a hitchhiker on the side of the road, but when I slowed down and took a second look, he was gone. I swerved to avoid 3 different raccoons that didn't end up being there, but I didn't know what else to do, so I continued. The last thing I remember from that commute is driving past an apartment building where some friends of mine lived. That apartment building is about 3 minutes from where I lived at the time. The next thing I knew, I was waking up. I was parked outside of my house. The sun was shining. I was in the driver's seat of my car, but the seat was reclined. I'd put the car in park, but the engine was still running. It was shortly after 6 a.m., meaning about 2.5 hours had passed. To this day, it's probably the freakiest experience I've ever had. I swore then and there to never drive that tired again. Subsequent late nights at the theater, I slept in the building. On 1 or 2 occasions, I started driving home, but ended up pulling over to sleep. But I never have repeated that mistake, and I never will. I know I am extremely lucky that I didn't hurt myself or someone else. I didn't total my car. I didn't even hit a mailbox or a trash can. I knew I might not be so fortunate if I pushed my luck a second time. Story 2. Visiting the wrong doctor. The general public will never know what makes a good doctor and what makes a bad one. The standard of care you get from one hospital to the next can be life-changing. My dad finally switched away from his 85-year-old doctor who refuses to retire. The new doctor was floored at how mismanaged my father's medication was, and my dad went from exhausted and needing naps every few hours to the best health he's been in 20 years with a normal sleep schedule. My mom got a new doctor 2 years ago after our family doctor retired, and while reviewing her prescriptions, the doctor said, "This one must be wrong. How long have you been taking this medicine?" My mom said, "About 2 years. It's because of my insomnia. Turns out nobody is supposed to take that medication for more than 2 to 3 weeks because it causes massive liver damage after that. The doctor didn't even understand why the pharmacy kept dispensing it regardless of the prescription." My grandparents both went to the same doctor and both had fairly extensive cardiac histories. My grandmother had chest pains for years. which did give her a good baseline for when the real pains were occurring. Their cardiologist and the residents at the hospital where they always went would try to change up their medications whenever they were admitted, but their primary care physician would always override the orders. Lo and behold, their PCP retired, and the younger doctors who brought out the retiring doctor's practice immediately changed up my grandmother's medication. My grandfather passed at this point. Turns out that the chest pain my grandmother had for all those years was a reaction to her blood pressure medication. I forget if it was a calcium channel blocker or a beta blocker. As soon as she switched medications, the chest pains were gone, unless it was something legit. After my grandfather passed, we talked with one of the doctors that came to her wake. He was telling us how they had to change up so many medications across all patients practice-wide because they either weren't effective or were causing side effects. They said the retired doctor would always tell them, "They're fine, that's just the medicine working for them." I had a doctor who saw my liver enzyme levels were super high but never did any follow-up tests or asked any questions. She said sometimes these levels elevate when you're injured, but she didn't have a response when I asked why she didn't follow up on any injuries. Turned out I had a 9.6 cm tumor on my liver that was wrapped around my IVC and several other masses hanging out. My new doctor checks everything. If she sees a hint of a problem, she tries to get to the bottom of it as quickly as possible. She even calls me after the office has closed to tell me her findings. It's amazing. It becomes super apparent with mental health. Been through 4 psychiatrists. One spent half the appointment encouraging me to look into Eastern spiritual crap. One treated me like a drug addict because I was stupidly honest with her about how I would smoke weed socially in the past. One kept telling me to read books from known quacks, and the other told me I was only experiencing panic attacks because I was constantly withdrawing from Klonopin, which I had only been prescribed barely over a month at that point. Story 3. Combining different cleaning products can lead to toxic gas in the room. This is one of the biggest criticisms I see of that cleaning lady on TikTok who cleans fast food bathrooms for free. She gets sponsors and everything, so that's also a lie. She doesn't get permission, so who knows what harm she could be doing. And then she acts like the employees telling her to stop are insane for not letting her help them out when it's literally dangerous. I feel like most people are aware and extra cautious about mixing bleach with things, but hydrogen peroxide and vinegar are sneaky ones that can get you if you're too casual with one close to a point where you're working with the other. Your hands start getting itchy or burning, and you're not sure why. When I worked at the local burger joint as a teen, a friend and I decided we wanted to really clean the floors. We took pride in our work, so we thought bleach and ammonia together would be really super cleaning. We giggled and laughed at the awful choking smell and just figured it meant our concoction would work. We're both pretty lucky a manager caught us the second time and let us know how dangerous it was. My dad did this in a back room at a place he worked at. Even though the place was closed and empty, for some reason, he locked the latch on the door to the back room. So when he began choking on the fumes, he couldn't get the door open right away and had to keep fiddling with the lock. He said he coughed up blood afterward, but never went to the hospital. Every once in a while, I'll think about it again and ask him yet again what the hell he was thinking. Story 4. Not sleeping. That crap will ruin your mental state and just ruin your overall functioning body. This is quite possibly the biggest contributor to postpartum depression. Lack of sleep due to having a newborn caused me to lose my patience for anything. I was constantly irritable and would get angry or just cry over anything. The scariest were the intrusive thoughts. These range from person to person, but can include stuff like thinking someone will break into your house and steal your baby, which was a thought that terrified me for several night feedings, to thoughts of yeeting the baby out the window. Lack of sleep can be so severe it causes postpartum psychosis, which is a medical/psychiatric emergency. Combining all that with the frustration of not being able to calm a crying baby, it's not too difficult to see why even educated people and people who aren't prone to violence can shake their babies. When they have a clear mind, they know it's harmful to the baby, but sleep deprivation leads to so many mental issues. We all like to think that we would never do that if we were in that situation, but you become a different person when you haven't slept more than 3 hours a night for the past 2 months. This is why I could never be a parent. If I get less than 8 hours, I'm a witch. I love kids, I'm a nanny, and I looked after the nanny kids for a few days while their parents were away. One of my pet peeves is crappy kid cartoons. Cocomelon is the worst. I swore to myself I wouldn't let the 2-year-old watch Cocomelon while I was there. 4 a.m. the first morning she comes into my living room bed and starts talking. I gave in like a little bee. It was Cocomelon all the way. I just needed sleep. No way I could do that for years, no matter what my mom says. Nope. Story 5. Once we start calling sunburns radiation burns, people will start taking it seriously. When I was younger, I didn't realize how bad a sunburn could be. I hated the feeling of sunscreen, so I just decided to not wear it one day. What's the worst that can happen? I get a little red? Turns out second-degree sunburn is what can happen. I woke up the next day extremely nauseous, my skin bright red. The burns opened up into sores that my family was very surprised somehow didn't scar. For the next 2 weeks, my entire face was covered in weeping open wounds. I don't mean it took 2 weeks to heal, I mean it took 2 weeks for the wounds to close. So my face was only covered in scabs instead of open sores. There was nothing to do about it but wait, and I hid in my room the entire time because I felt so gross. Weeping open wounds. The entire face just wet the whole time. 0 out of 10 experience. And that's actually not even the worst it can get. I refused to put on sunscreen when we went skiing once. I was adamant about it, and I didn't wear goggles or sunglasses. It was one of those brilliant, clear days. We were driving home that night, stopping at a restaurant, and I told my parents it was really dark, and I couldn't read the menu. Turns out I went snowblind and burned my eyes. Couldn't see for a week. Had the same weeping sores on my face, but I never saw it. When I was a kid, my family operated under the idea that you need to burn and then you'll tan. Not sure why they expected that to work on me, Casper's slightly paler sister, but at 6 I got an absolutely horrible sunburn. I never got another one because I would insist on sunscreen and insist on going inside after lunch because someone told me the sun was much worse after lunch, and I was a kid who never forgot anything. I'm honestly really glad I learned that lesson young, although I wish they'd just put sunscreen on me to begin with. As a ginger who stupidly refused to wear sunblock during the summer because sunburn isn't painful to me, I am now starting to find odd, dark spots showing up on my skin in places that got really bad sunburn multiple times. Face, shoulders, knees, forehead. The truth of the matter is, I'm too scared to go see someone about it. I'm a healthy person overall, and if I were to find out I have some form of skin cancer, I don't know. I have too much going on in life right now to be sick from cancer medications. When I was about 8 years old, my cousin and I got stuck in a current. We got in trouble with her parents for not listening when told to get out of the water. Her parents aren't the brightest. I didn't know how deadly it could be at the time, on the count that I was only 8. I just remember being a bit scared that I couldn't get to shore. Luckily for us, this was at a beach that was roped off because it leads into the Gulf of Mexico. We were able to grab onto the rope and pull ourselves out. This is a beach that we went to all the time. The other side of the rope is for boaters. I didn't know if my cousin would even remember this. She's done a lot of drugs since then, so probably not. I remember though, it wasn't until I got older and started learning about this kind of stuff that I realized how lucky we were. Story 6. At the beach, riptide. If you don't spot them and don't know how to get out of one, it can be terrifying and deadly. The advice of the RNLI is if you are caught in a riptide, do not try and swim against it, as you will exhaust yourself. Stay calm and float to assess the situation. If the water is too deep to stand, and you can swim, swim across the direction of the current, parallel to the shore, until you're free. Use any breaking waves to help you get back to the beach. If you need to catch your breath first, relax and float around for about 60 to 90 seconds. Some rip currents recirculate rather than flow out to sea, and may bring you closer to shore. I got caught in one surfing. It was terrifying. One moment I was standing in knee-deep water wading in. The next second, a huge wave crashed over me. It threw my board parallel to shore and pulled back so hard, I was heading out to sea, trapped behind the board. I somehow fought the board and got myself free and back on top. Then I paddled towards the advanced guys at the back in the bigger waves. I had no choice. The rip was pulling me out to sea. They were shocked to see me so far out and were like, I told them I got caught in a rip and just paddled my way out. I caught a wave back in and got out of the water. It was too dangerous. I told the lifeguard who dismissed me. That afternoon on the same trip, 2 girls my age were pulled out to sea. One died. I got lucky. I had a board and knew what to do because I loved watching Bondi rescue. Here in the UK, we don't learn about rips or how to get out of them. Yep, the key is to figure out first what's going on and understand the situation. Then you swim parallel to the shore, if possible moving forward. If not, then swim and accept you may be pulled out a bit further. Your goal is to just get out of the riptide, which you eventually will, at which point you can head towards shore. Waves are a great way to catch a break for a second, and most importantly, don't panic because the ocean isn't the enemy, your stamina is. Not a lifeguard, just been caught in several since I was a child in California. Story 7. Dull kitchen knives. As a chef for the last 14 years, 100% I've used some awful home knives over the years, and they make me nervous compared to my own. Usually I'm chatting/thinking about my tasks/doing more than one job at a time. When I use blunt ones at someone's house, I only think about cutting and keep my fingers tucked in. Unexpectedly sharp knives can also be dangerous. I worked in a restaurant as a server, and one day someone in the kitchen decided all the knives in the restaurant needed to be sharpened to a razor edge, including the server station bread knife. 3 people went to the hospital that week due to accidentally cutting themselves, and a few more in the following months. Eventually, the servers demanded a new bread knife at an all-staff meeting, and the kitchen crew was livid about it for some reason. Story 8. Moving water. It can only take 6 inches of fast-flowing water to knock you over, and double that can float a car. It only takes an inch or so of sneaker wave to float a multi-ton log on the beach enough to where it'll spin and crush you underneath. This is a favorite mode of death amongst tourists to the beaches of Oregon and Washington. Stay off the drift logs, people. Damn, never really considered this, but it makes sense. We don't have drift logs like that on the East Coast, so I never really thought about that as a danger. But I was in Washington and Oregon last year, and I was climbing all over them. Story 9. Cheaping out on tires for your vehicle. Man, the first time I bought a full set of Michelin tires, I was like, what the fuck have I been missing? The difference between those and whatever I could afford at Walmart or wherever was insane. Have only bought those ever since. Walmart sells plenty of expensive tires, people generally just buy the cheapest. Don't do that. Unless you barely drive your car. Rubber will dry rot after a certain amount of time. No need to get tires that will last 100k miles if you drive 1k a year. You're not going to benefit. If you're going by how far someone will typically drive in the lifetime of the tire, most people should be looking for 45 or 50 mile tires. The problem is that the 45 to 50k mile tires tend to be some of the worst performing minimum viable product, barely meets NHTSA standard tires available. For whatever reason, there's probably a bunch of them, I haven't looked in depth. Tread life and tire quality are linked. So if you want something that works a little better, you're going to end up with the 70, 80, or 100k mile tires, even if you don't need that much tread. Same, except they weren't from Walmart, which doesn't exist in the UK, used to get the budget of budget tires from my tire guy. Then I had a little extra money, so I picked up a full set of Continental. Lifespan not only increased, the tire life, but handling in the wet, braking, fuel consumption, you name it changed dramatically. Story 10. Falling/knocking people over. Hit your head at just the right angle, and spot, and boom, dead. The guy in my hometown got a manslaughter charge this way. He was drunk and high and being a fool. He was smoking outside a bar and started something with some guy. Socked him in the face, not very hard, but the dude stumbled on the wet, slick ground and hit the back of his head on the curb. Dead. He didn't mean to kill him, but it didn't matter. He did. Yeah, this right here. I have zero interest in any kind of fight with anyone. Never have. But yeah, someone can get killed. People don't realize how easy it is to die or kill someone in a fight. We're both stronger and more fragile than we realize. Someone could hit their head the wrong way, twist their neck the wrong way, etc. I knew a guy who lost an eye in what should have been just a stupid fight. Someone could draw a gun or a knife. Their buddies could join in and you could suddenly be outnumbered and end up in the hospital. You could be the one who draws in that situation, and even if you didn't instigate the fight, and you justifiably shoot someone, the trajectory of your life is now changed forever. Personally, if someone is getting too rowdy in a bar and I feel like trouble is brewing, I settle up and leave. I don't care if I haven't finished my drink. I pay my bill and get out. It's just not worth it, and there's nothing manly about taking stupid risks. Story 11. Ladders. I came to say this. Falls of all kinds can be deadly, but even a few extra feet off the ground significantly increases the force you'll hit with. Even a small 2 or 3 foot ladder deserves attention. I know a guy who fell off a ladder only a few feet in the air and died. He was an extremely safe worker, but no one really knows what happened. The guy he was working with went into the next room for a minute and came back to find him dead on the floor with the ladder still up. It was an extremely sad situation. Something very similar happened to my ex as well. She used to work at a CVS. An older man, probably in his early 60s, worked there too. She didn't know him all that well, just that he was very nice and had been working there for many years. One day he was using the 3-foot stepladder to restock some hard-to-reach merchandise, and well, my ex and another coworker found him lying on the floor. They called 911 and tried to resuscitate, but it was too late. My ex went to the funeral, and she told me there were less than 12 people there. Most were coworkers, but his wife of many years, who barely spoke English, was there sobbing uncontrollably. No other family or friends. He's now just gone. My ex was 21 at the time and it hit her hard. This was about 20 years ago. I think about it all the time because my current partner is short and we have a 3-foot stepladder in the kitchen so that she can reach stuff on the higher shelves. I told her that story, and I always tell her to be very careful when she uses it. Even landing on your feet and using your knees takes its toll. I knew an Army Ranger who enlisted at 5'6". He left 6 years later at 5'3". The number of parachute jumps, fast rope insertions, and just regular infantry life compressed his spine to where he lost height. He had a great sense of humor about it though. He said what he lost in height, he gained in length for the ladies. Story 12. Escalators. The torque produced to lift dozens of people and their luggage will not stop for your limbs. Watch your kids, carry your pets, don't be distracted. There are emergency stop buttons at the top and bottom. If you see a problem such as a person falling or loose metal or glass, use the button. Better delayed than traumatized, maimed, or dead. Several years ago, I saw a news segment about a young child whose hoodie laces got caught in the escalator. Someone hit the emergency stop button, but the laces were still pulled so tight that he could not breathe. Fortunately, someone had a knife and was able to cut the laces. He was saved fast enough that there was no permanent damage. I had stopped carrying my utility knife prior to seeing that segment. Now I always make sure I have one on me. There was a kid who looped in a paperclip around his finger and fed it into the top comb plates at one of my jobs. Paperclip got grabbed by the step. Paperclip pulled right through his finger and cut it off. Parents tried to sue but were unsuccessful because that was crap parenting. This was an airport beyond security with no tools or knives allowed. Happened too fast for anyone else to do anything. We are soft flesh in a world of hard edges. Be careful out there, folks. I'm a clumsy person. Wouldn't be surprised if I had mild dyspraxia. And I'm extremely aware of this fact when I'm in situations where it can be dangerous for me. People think it's weird that escalators freak me out, but if I don't pay really close attention to every single thing my body is doing on an escalator, I could easily trip and get caught in one. It's dangerous enough that I trip on stairs all the time. I don't need the stairs to also eat me when I do trip on them. Everyone always makes the joke about a stopped escalator just becomes stairs. It doesn't. You should not climb up the stopped escalators when possible. The foot height is not the standard height of stairs, and you can trip and get snagged easily. The belt may have issues that may result in snapping of the belt. When an escalator restarts, it will jolt forward and potentially have you falling down a story. Story 13. Antifreeze. It's way more poisonous than you probably think it is, and it has a sweet taste that attracts cats and children. If your cat laps up a teaspoonful, they're pretty much already dead. A client at an auto repair shop I worked at was a crusty old doctor, apparently practicing on-the-job retirement. He had this big sweetheart of a dog who he'd let go bounding around the shop the whole time he was there, running all over the greasy floor with antifreeze spills. I tried asking him to not let her run around because it was dangerous. He just gave me a dismissive, "It's okay." I said it's not okay because of the poisonous antifreeze everywhere. He looked openly contemptuous of me and said, "She is a good dog." I then gave a brief synopsis of the then current story of a nearly extinct California condor that was painstakingly raised in captivity, then shortly after release drank antifreeze leaking from a stranded van on the side of the mountain road and died nearby. He looked at me like I was an a-hole and sneered, "That's those dumb things." Story 14. There's a newish trend among woodworkers called fractal burning or Lichtenberg burning, where you use electricity to create this cool lightning that burns across wood. The problem is, it's extremely dangerous. There has already been at least one person who died trying to do it. Probably more, but I only remember hearing of one specifically. There are a ton of videos of people doing it every day, but if you slip up just slightly, you're gonna electrocute yourself. My dad plays around with this in his garage. I have no idea how safe this is. He hooks up leads to an old car battery and uses rubber gloves. We pull the cars out and he does it in the middle of the garage just in case something goes wrong. He's made some cool pieces of wood, but I don't know if it's safe. Would love to know, so I can tell him to be more careful if need be. Yeah, do some research and look at his setup. If you see something that he can improve on safety-wise, tell him. He might already have a good safe setup, but almost everything can be improved. I like the rubber gloves, but maybe he needs to include a heavy-duty rubber mat and rubber boots. A knee-high safety cutoff switch is also a good idea. And maybe make sure he has good SOPs, standard operating procedures, like a checklist that gets checked off every time he disconnects the device. Does he have a first aid kit handy? Basic stuff like that. But yeah, be concerned. Try to discourage it, or at least find constructive ways to make him safer, because it's only a matter of time before something bad happens, and it only takes one bad thing to happen. Story 15. Do you know how the basic answer is social media? Well, I'd like to improve that. A dangerous thing people get into so casually every day is arguing with random people. It gets addictive. Seeing notifications, seeing upvotes or likes and reposts. Pretty soon you start postponing work because you have to correct someone, or you have to reply ASAP. You lose sleep, you wake up frustrated, you randomly lash out at your loved ones, maybe even your pet. You develop anger and attention problems. I get massive anxiety when someone disagrees with me online, to the point where I have trouble sleeping. Random internet strangers who I will never meet, nor will their comments ever actually affect me or my life, and yet it gives me a panic attack. Story 16. Tooth infections. I knew a guy who went septic and had a stroke from a tooth infection that he didn't realize was that bad. He was busy at work/life and kept meaning to go to the dentist. He was in his late 20s/early 30s. Super nice guy. Oof, this was almost like my cousin. He had a slight toothache and performed a show that night. He was a singer and fell off the stage and hit the side of his face. The tooth broke and he went septic within a day and passed the next. He was 27. This scares the crap out of me. I have a history of terrible teeth, plus my molars throb and become sensitive on one side when I get a sinus infection. They hurt before I had other symptoms. 4 different times I've gone to the dentist with bad tooth pain, so sure it's an abscess, only to be told I'm fine. Sure enough, a week later it subsided. I have started waiting at least a week or 2 before I get concerned about tooth pain. Story 17. Driving fast in parking lots or neighborhoods. When I'm playing outside with my kids, I pretend to throw the ball at the car. Oops. Just as I told my teenager, if you kill a child or person, your life will be over. You will never be the same, nor will that person's family. My son almost died getting hit by a car driving way too fast in a parking lot. He was also a kid who would run a lot and never listen when we yelled at him to stop. After catching the heart in my chest and scolding him from running out in the parking lot, I shot a dirty look at the driver. They knew they were going too fast. I knew they were going too fast, and they quickly took off again. Every morning I watch the jackass employees of 2 companies just whip through their parking lot. It's a 15 with speed bumps, but people will fly through there at 50 and quickly maneuver to avoid the speed bumps. It's also dark at that time and there's a lot of blind corners. Someone is going to have an accident. It's not an if, but a when. Story 18. Deer. They are one of the animals most likely to kill you, when one of them crashes through your windshield. Less them and more moose that do that. Deer are a risk for small, lower vehicles. If you hit the legs, odds are the deer will hit the windshield. But there is also a good chance that they will go right over the car. SUVs and trucks will hit their bodies. Less risk to drivers. But moose are big enough, odds are you are just taking their legs out. The difference is that there are a lot more deer out there, and deer are a lot harder to spot before it's suddenly darting into the road. If we're talking about the US, there are 100 times as many white-tailed deer out there as there are moose, and most of those moose are in Alaska. Yes, if you hit a moose, a really bad day is the best you can hope for, and death is pretty damn likely. But most people in the US will never see a wild moose, whereas deer are all over the place. Numbers I'm finding are about 1.5 million deer collisions and an estimated 800 moose collisions, in Alaska at least. Sure, the number goes up if you include CO and US moose. If we're just talking purely potential damage to the vehicle though, well yeah, hitting any big animal is bad. Story 19. Benzos and alcohol. Went from, hey, this feels great, to waking up back home with one vague memory of my parents in their 70s, with me in an ER. I had apparently attempted to walk to get more booze and fell off a 6-inch step in front of my own apartment and hit my head. I used to take a Xanax bar, then drink a whole bottle of alcohol. I didn't know how the hell I survived that and never got seriously injured. The day I realized I needed to get my crap together was when I took 3 Xanax bars, drank, and did other drugs, and woke up days later in the psych ward. That was almost 8 years ago, and I haven't touched a drug since. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you would like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like, and don't forget to subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.